Hi there. How are you guys? Thank you for joining the class. Let's wait a few minutes. Everybody comes up. For you guys who see this class in review, you can still ask your questions in a thread. And then I'm happy to answer the questions. So today we will talk about 11 ways to teach your dogs and your kids consent. Now, speaking of consent, by the way, I charged your card extra. It's okay. You're welcome. Now, you see, I took advantage because you paid me with your card. And then I thought, well, since you paid me with your card, you like what you hear, and so I can charge you extra. It's kind of like consented. I thought you were right with it, right? So you see, all of a sudden, consent people take without thinking about it because we just assume it's okay, but sometimes it's not. So we assume that especially dogs and kids understand what we're talking about, but it's not. We need to really be careful about how we present things and how we teach our children and our dogs about consent, because consent is usually the main reason why so many people get hurt. In fact, 4.5 million people every year get bit by a dog. In fact, 1 of 5 people end up in the hospital with stitches. That means 800,000 people get care, which half of them are kids. So 400,000 kids get hurt every year, again and again and again. And the reason why it's happening is because of consent. The parents don't teach the children that even if they have a dog in their house, they still need consent to approach another dog. And sometimes even people who I know, they think, I have dogs for many years. I'm a dog lover. I know everything about dogs. So I will approach the dog because I'm a dog lover. Well, that is not as it goes, because the dog doesn't know that. And if you approach the dog without his consent, you're basically invading his private space, which means you're an intruder. And your actions, reaching out to your dog and bending over to your dog, is basically a predator behavior. So if we come from a perspective, what is a dog? A dog is an opportunistic, scavenging predator, right? An opportunistic, scavenging predator. He will grab the opportunity to dig around and find something he will eat. And if he's very hungry and he doesn't find something to eat, he's going to chase it. And so as a predator, he will reach out to certain points in order to get his prey. It will be the head, the neck, the legs. The head, the neck, and the legs. So if I reach out to a dog that I don't know about with my hands, either to his legs or to his neck or towards his head, I'm behaving basically like a predator. Don't take me wrong. You love dogs. I love dogs too. But we need to see from a dog's perspective who is uncomfortable and as a predator himself being reached out to places that he attacks to kill will trigger a certain thinking process. And this is why all these people, all these 4.5 million people every year get hurt because they don't understand that they react and act like predators. So for example, I see a police officer who will enter the space of a dog, which means a backyard, and he's confronted by a dog who's protecting the yard. In that moment, if the officer doesn't take permission for the dog to enter the space, puts himself in the dangerous position, he becomes the predator, and the dog becomes the defender. And all of a sudden, we have a conflict. You cannot avoid that. I understand. The police officer has to go in. The dog has to protect. The officer has a gun. The dog has teeth. We don't go down that road and see what happens next. That's not the point right now. But the point is, if a child enters the room that the dog doesn't know, and the dog is in a safe place, and the child approaches because he loves dogs, and he's like, I want to touch the dog. That's a predator behavior. You cannot explain the dog that this behavior is not, because it is. The way the child approaches without recognizing the dog's body language, without recognizing the dog's intentions, and the dog doesn't understand why this thing is out of control coming up to him without consent. Whoa, growl, bite. Because considering the dogs can make up to 14 decisions per second, perceive 14 informations per second. In these seconds, the child didn't give one information. The only information he gave him who he is, the predator. In fact, if I teach the child what it means to take permission for your dog, so he has to watch his body language, he has to watch his verbal language, and he has to watch his intentions and actually start recognizing what the dog is meaning by lifting the lips. It's not because he's smiling, it's because he's super stressed. So that kids don't know. Kids are not educated. They don't learn it in class. So us as a parents, it's our job to educate both sides, to educate the child and to educate the dog how to communicate with each other safely. And that knowledge, once that is in the person, we can even teach other people who, we know everything, I don't need to learn anything new. And proof is that some people are so confident about what they're doing that basically they stop listening and stop looking. Come on, guys. No. Come here. So what happens next is, even if a person approaches you and he wants to meet your dog because he's thinking cute, what happens is you tell the person no and he doesn't listen. He will continue touching your dog. Good. Just a short second, be right back.